Greetings all, welcome to Everything Borrowed, where we sit down to share stories and have conversations with entrepreneurs to artists and everyone in between. Today's episode is powered by Blake's Hard Cider, 100% fresh pressed, all natural and gluten-free, straight from our family's 75-year-old farm in Southeast Michigan. Find us in your local grocer or have Blake's direct ship to your home by visiting blakestore.com. Use promo code EverythingBorrowed to receive 10% off your first order. Must be 21 years of age. Please enjoy mindfully. Hey guys, our guest today is Chris Becker, the founder of Better Rhodes, an alcohol-free e-commerce marketplace where anyone and everyone looking for tasty alcohol-free options can shop. The alcohol-free market is exploding right now as more people move towards creating sober, curious periods in their lives. Whether you are giving up the sauce for good or giving the body a break, check out Better Rhodes and see how they can help support. Enjoy. Chris, how are you?
Hey, Andrew.
Hey,
how's it going?
I'm great. Thank you for taking time with us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a partner in the industry, I'm super excited about this because I have a lot of questions, and I only know enough about the non-elk space to be dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I may only be one chapter ahead of you, but I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. So you're out in Connecticut?
Yeah, I am. Family's out here, although been in New York for we moved out here 3 or 4 years ago with our young ones, and New York a lot as well, and that's where we moved from, although less and less since the last year or so. But see, you're from Michigan, so I'm a Ontario boy.
You are?
Bred, so,
okay, awesome. Whereabouts in Ontario?
So the Hamilton area, and then I have a brother who was in Windsor for a while, and he now former Detroit cop, and just living up on Lake St. Clair now on the Michigan side. So
okay, so you have some ties to the Great Lakes state.
Yeah, definitely a Great Lakes province, and Lake Huron and some of the areas. So definitely close by.
Well, yeah, kind of jumping right into it. Talk to me a little bit about the origin story of Better Rhodes. Love the website, by the way. Love all the products, and I was actually pleasantly surprised at how many amazing products they're actually available on your website, because they're hard to find at retail still. So I think you're adding a huge value there. But talk to us about the start of it.
First of all, thank you. And that actually is kind of a piece of kind of one of the 3 kind of legs of the stool of the origin story, if you like. And like a lot of other people in the industry, whether they're producers or influencers or just people engaged in the conversation around alcohol free, it starts with my personal story. So not drinking, and I was on vacation with my family out on the West Coast, and they were kind of out beaching, and I was kind of work vacation and was sitting in a coffee shop, probably procrastinating, and knowing that I was going to be off more and hanging out. So I just got myself looking for alcohol-free beers online, thinking, at the end of the day, I was like, I don't want to drink O'Doul's, no offense, and I don't want it to suck.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe there is some stuff out here. And, lo and behold, I saw a couple of things, and then, pretty quickly realized that there's actually such a thing as alcohol-free breweries. So it's some craft breweries might have an alcohol-free, brand or, certain run of one. But then there were actually dedicated alcohol-free breweries, probably 5 at the time. This is about almost exactly 2 years ago. So I spent the afternoon checking them out, looking them up, trying to get a feel for which ones I might want to order. But, beverage orders online, if anyone's ever tried it with, say, a Drizzly or even Amazon, isn't cheap. And, with minimum orders and shipping costs, I must have spent probably over $100 easily sending a fair amount of stuff, when really what I wanted to do was just try like one.
Right.
Or at least maybe more, but I don't know if I'm going to like them or not. Because like you said, these aren't exactly readily available. And the amount of time it took to even find probably 3 or 4 or 5, I think I ended up getting like 5 or 6 sent to me. Like I said, it was a large part of an afternoon. So I ended up thinking, well, maybe there's some other people out there like me. And Better Rhodes was really born out of that idea, doing some market research, seeing how much else was out there, not just in beer, but in sparkling wines and spirit alternatives, but also adult beverages kind of more broadly. And that kind of is where things started. And Better Rhodes is really trying to make it easy, fun, and great tasting to try to see what's out there, including the community and the conversation that's going on around all that.
Yeah, I've always said, everything in moderation, and including moderation. And as I, enter my third decade, being in the alcohol industry in my 20s, I find myself looking more and more for moderate opportunities, to enjoy. And, I'm looking at trying to find, and I've been on the hunt actually for wines, non-alc wines, and there's a couple that you can find out there, but they're actually pretty enjoyable, and I see a space, and I see a growing demographic of people who are more health conscious, working to be balanced. It doesn't mean for those of us who are looking for kind of more balance, it doesn't mean you can't enjoy a great libation from time to time, but kind of filtering in some of these other opportunities that allow for a social setting for you to be in a bar, to be in an atmosphere, and to be doing so moderately and mindfully, I think is just a great thing. And I think we're going to see a larger influx of people, and you're seeing large national brands start to follow suit, and I think as a result you're going to see more and more, it's going to become more and more in vogue, and I think that's a good thing for people and good thing for a burgeoning industry within the alcohol industry, because it will be alcohol producers or produce the non-alc products. So and you're creating a great kind of a great vessel for that. But e-commerce is an interesting space. It's probably become more and more interesting and more necessary during the time of COVID. But were you in this space before Better Rhodes, or how did you jump into that? What was your life before Better Rhodes?
I like to say I'm a recovering management consultant. So background is really more on the technology side. So spent a lot of time in a lot of big companies working on big technology implementations, and just too many to count, just dozens and dozens. And I'm in my fifth decade, so was doing that for quite some time. And then in the aughts, had ventured out more into the startup space and had done a social media kind of software as a service platform, kind of in user generated content back when that was, really just kind of opening up. And then, so this is a bit of a marriage between the two, but e-commerce, because of that, was kind of front and center in terms of how we planned to kind of engage in the market. And like you said, this isn't about like being punitive or, not drinking. I mean, obviously that's a part of it, but, it could be for mindful reasons. It could be for moderation reasons. There's a fairly big sober curious movement where people are just trying to kind of consider maybe more thoughtfully their relationship with alcohol. You could be pregnant. You could be planning to run a marathon. You could be lots of different reasons. And
trying to lose weight.
This is about, trying to lose weight. Yeah. A lot of these drinks do highlight their nutritional, they might have some nootropic elements to it. That's a whole area that kind of overlaps with this. I mean, even with, the growth in the cannabis legalization, a lot of people are saying, hey, I have other ways I like to get my buzz.
Sure.
But I still like the taste of an IPA or a sparkling wine or a cocktail mocktail type, a mixed drink flavor from a flavor perspective. So there's lots of these different, which is where the kind of Better Rhodes idea kind of came from. It's really a collection of these places, and it's meant to be a fun and open and inclusive conversation. It's like, hey, you got your own reasons. And obviously there's a sober element to that, and that's all cool. And, we're here to just talk about the great taste and make it easy and fun, which is where we do a lot of mix packs, for example, where people can try out some different things, like a mix six different beers, going right back to the beginning of the idea of the business. So I'm right there with you. Yeah, it's but that's where it came from. And that's my background.
Yeah, that's a great origin story, and really interesting, because you touched on something that I think is important, and one of the things I thought was fascinating about your website, and I'm about to click the purchase button on some wines for my wife and I to try. because trying to find a good non-alc wine is kind of like, a treasure hunt. And you have
It's a tough one.
and you have a lot of great, options on your website. But I think the big thing is kind of that trial factor right now. People are not necessarily, I don't think, basically everyone knows O'Doul's and I think Saint, Paulier. I think those are like the two that are, those are kind of like the two brands that people know from a non-alc perspective, and then it's all just wide open. So I think there's this huge opportunity for trial and subscription. And I noticed that you guys seem to play pretty big on the subscription / kind of these fun boxes, these opportunities. And when you look at breaking down your offerings from just a single brand to kind of these various deals, where do you see your, the revenue side from your business? Are people jumping into particular brands, or is it really in the exploratory state right now?
I think it's exploratory mainly. And I think, a lot of times, like if somebody has a beer they like and they can go to that producer, most places you can get and buy direct.
Right.
So we don't really add a lot of value there. But if you're curious for whatever reason, like I said, the different reasons, you might even just be dipping your toe in the water and it's very much early days. Economically, if you say, hey, any alcohol-free beer I've ever tasted, I didn't like, but you guys are saying there's all these different brands and wow, I come to your site and there's way more than I thought. I mean, it goes right back to the beginning. One of our first boxes, or really the idea was, here's a box, here's a 6-pack of 6 different beers from 6 different breweries. So it's cost effective from that standpoint. So, but yeah, it's the mixed packs and those experience packs. And, we've got a Valentine's Day gift pack or a baby bump pack, but so gifting is also a big piece of it. So, even on the corporate side, like corporate happy hours, they're virtual. So a lot of companies still want to have some sort of social event since they're not meeting up in Vegas or someplace for their sales conference, but they're probably not too stoked about sending boxes of alcohol to people's houses to engage in a virtual happy hour where in fact, as much as it may not look like it on screen, everybody's drinking alone. So, there's there's so many different kind of areas where it is test and trial, but it's also experience and event based where it can be part of the equation. And it can also be part of hopefully something where some people might be drinking alcohol and some people might be drinking non-alcohol free. And it doesn't have to be kind of a binary one or, all or nothing.
Right. No, I agree. What one of the questions I had for you was, accessibility seems to be a hard part of finding this in a concept like Better Rhodes. How have you went about finding supplier partners? Are they just coming out of the woodwork, looking for your service? Did you have to go hunting for them? How did that process begin? Because I imagine, that's a bit of a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah. In fact, the whole supply chain, I'm going right back to the producers. It's been a really interesting process. And because it's such early days, we tend to work with and connect with producers that are somewhat on the smaller side, a bit more curated or craft or artisanal. At the beginning, it was hard. And now we're a bit more established. So we've got some ways to, and kind of networking and connecting. A lot of it is from overseas. So one of the things we found is that kind of the normalization of the alcohol-free industry and brands and having it available in retail stores, for example, is a bit more, they're a bit further down that road in the UK and other countries, mostly in Europe. So the whole idea of dry January, for example, that started there. And so a lot of the brands we carry and a lot of the conversations we're having now about some of the brands I'm really excited that we'll be bringing to market over the next few months are new to North America or new to the US.
That's exciting.
And we're bringing them from overseas. And then there's others that are, coming out definitely new because the space is growing. And we tend to be early in those conversations now more than maybe we were a couple of months ago. So it's either new players or new entrants that are local in say North America, or we're we're often involved in bringing new products to market into North America that have been successful elsewhere.
You talk about the market growing. Do you have any data at your fingertips, or maybe you can speak more broadly to, how the non-alc industry is growing? Because I know, being in the alcohol industry, I know it's something we talk about a lot, and we're working on some R&D products. The one thing that from a producer side is they're really hard to make because
Yes.
people and it is a challenge. I mean, you have to be a scientist to do them well and do them right, and it's something that we're working on, and we're in various iterations of different products. But it has been a challenge. It's actually much harder than creating an alcoholic product. Alcoholic products are they happen naturally, and this is something that takes some science.
Yeah, and in fact, I'd love to hear more about that at some point. But yeah, it's definitely growing. But I would say, it's so, in terms of percentage growth, millennials already tend to drink less, at least compared to my generation, and the dry January movement, I think, was like at least 50%, according at least in the UK, than it was last year. But it's such a small base, so that you can say these percentages like, whoa, those are big percentage growth. But I would say it's still a tiny proportion of the overall population. So, I always say, like that one, maybe 99 times out of 100, I might mention this, and the average response is, why would I not want to have alcohol in my gin?
Right.
And I'm like, it's hard to argue.
Yeah, right.
Now, without getting into a longer conversation.
Right. Well,
so I think it's growing fast, but it's still small.
Yeah. Well, I can relate, coming from the cider world, in the hard cider space, that is, percentages on the overall alcohol, 3% of the overall alcohol category. So we're a decent sized fish in a small pond in the cider category, but a really small fish in a huge pond in the alcohol industry. So we relate I can relate very well to that, but it's a great place to be because you're really you're opening people up to new experiences. At least that's what we were doing with hard cider. I feel like that's what you're doing with non-alcohol products. And it's a great place to be, quite honestly, because I think that, that's where the magic happens. That's where real value is created for a company. I'm sure that's why you're heading down this path. And I think it's just a great, opportunity to show more people more options. I think people are curious about their drinking, their drinking opportunities and the way in which that they can enjoy experiences with people. I have friends that are, that not only do dry January, but sober October now. I mean, we just got to find other things that rhyme, and you need to get behind those marketing pushes because I think people will buy on, one of the things I was going to ask you is, what's been probably your biggest challenge? And I wanted to get a little bit into the supply chain side, but we'll get there a little bit later. But what has been the biggest challenge in this startup? For me in my head, I was thinking it'd be, something along the lines of procurement or fulfillment, just from, aggregating all these brands from companies all over the country, all over the world. But to me, that's one that pops up. But what has been your biggest challenge?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things. One is, managing growth. It doesn't happen in a nice straight line. Like maybe they like to show it on a chart.
It's messy. It's very messy.
Yeah. Scaling the fulfillment, because we focus on purpose, because that's where we add value on the curated collections. At the beginning, I would say I was not seeing the amount of focus we would, and eventually really made a decision to double down on around the fulfillment side and all of the supply chain issues that come with that. The different seasons have an effect. The entire e-commerce supply chain network is already being slammed, like UPS and FedEx and Amazon, like they had their best quarters ever, the last quarter of 2020. So to try to just, get your part of that. So I would say, probably that being the biggest. The other thing, which I don't think we've really gotten to yet, which I consider kind of our challenge right now, is, I think we've got a place where people can go and see by far the largest selection of alcohol-free products that, as you said, you don't either are hard to get or did not even know about, is to really kind of broaden that out into more of a community and a discussion. talk more about content. That's why I love, connecting with folks like yourself and podcasts like you have. So yeah, we've done some stuff with recipes and things, but I think one of our challenges is really to get out there to find the nooks and crannies of where this message resonates and kind of spread that out and let more people know that about what's going on.
The areas for opportunity, there's not too many. The cannabis industry is one, and the non-alc industry isn't quite. It's not like it hasn't been around for a long time, but you don't often see too many, industries that kind of bubble up, kind of almost from nothing. In the food, beverage, or consumption space. That's not in tech, and this seems to be one where there's just a huge range of possibilities for how you could go about, connecting and relating the product to different experiences, different people, it's kind of a creative's wet dream to be able to think about all the ways in which you can kind of start to market, these products and these experiences. Yeah. And I imagine that there's a ton of work to do around that thinking. When you look at, kind of broadening, there's so much to do on the beverage side, but, I think that there's more on the culture, the media side, and the kind of communication piece. Do you look at Better Rhodes when you look at, it 5 years from now? Is it the largest non-alcohol e-commerce supplier? Is it something different that's kind of helping, promote and lead the industry? Are you putting up, non-alcoholic breweries where people can kind of hang out and, have fun? What's your vision for that?
So there's two sides of it. One is, it's kind of to pick up on, it's not often that a space kind of opens up like this that is almost like the Wild West, like it's virgin territory, if you like. Sometimes I equate it to maybe what the vegan, vegetarian or industry might have been like in the 80s. Right down to the consumer experience, because I was thinking, I'm old enough to remember at that point, you might say, oh, my friend who's a vegetarian just invited me out to dinner. And I'm like, oh shit, I have to go to the vegetarian restaurant, the one in town that's going to suck. And I'm going to have to order some weird dish.
Right.
Now you'll be out to dinner with your friends and you might have a vegetarian friend and A, you wouldn't even know it. And B, you might order the vegetarian meal. You have one of many vegetarian dishes and not even really consider it because it was it's what you wanted. And I think we're kind of where veganism might have been in the 80s or some, that.
I love that. That's a great analogy. I love that.
And so there's a couple of things. One is I definitely see us continuing to try to bring a curated experience to people where they can enjoy what's going on in alcohol free, but knowing that they're new and they might be wanting, and they might have different reasons why they're trying it at different times. It's not a community like, say, a football team where, they're clearly all there for the same reasons. There's different roads, as the name implies, of why you might come in and out of the alcohol-free area at different points in your life or at different times of the year or whatever. So we want to definitely be there for that. We're looking at taking what we're doing, which a lot of producers would see as a headache. We kind of have, by virtue of our business as our bread and butter, fulfillment, pricing, digital advertising, e-commerce. So we're looking at basically, yes, we have our own brand, but as I said, I really want to focus it more, not in replacement of, but on our community, on the conversations with the customer, with the market, with the customer, with the communities out there. But kind of take what we've built and make it available to other producers that really want to get their message out there, that don't necessarily have to be, yes, we want them in our Better Rhodes, marketplace, but they can also be leveraging off of our backbone, our capabilities that we've built for their brand directly. So we're really focusing on kind of Better Rhodes as a platform, if you like, in 2021.
I like that. And, I think you hit on something that's really interesting is, when I think about, my pauses from my normal, socialization and kind of drinking, routine or habits, whatever you'd call it. it is it is, the pauses and the breaks are different at different times for different reasons. Sometimes it's a health and wellness thing. Sometimes it's kind of sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes you just realize that you're probably in a habit, in kind of a momentous habit where you're maybe consuming, too often, and you need to take a break. Sure. And you need to kind of, pause it, or you're being, overly social, whatever it is. I've noticed that the different pauses that I've taken, have always been for different reasons. And I think that's very interesting because, I think that there's so many different ways in which you can kind of connect with different clientele at different times in their lives and in their journey, on their life. So I really like that opportunity that you guys have. And it seems like you're building a platform so you can talk to all those people and about those experiences and how they can, use that experience, in your service and your brand to help, facilitate their experience, Yeah.
So. And in a positive, I think in a positive way. And that includes right through to sobriety, all the way through to whatever reason you might be interested, in the beverages, or even just the things people are talking about, that it's like inclusive, and it's like, hey,
right,
come on in. This is, for whatever reason you're here. That's cool.
Right. No, I love that. When you look at, your business model and the way in which you're set up, are you technically a retailer? Are you technically a distributor? What, I've always been curious of how, do you have to have a license to sell non-alcohol? I've always been curious about that as an alcohol producer. Do you have to have a license to sell non-alc products as like a distributor, or,
So it's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a bit of it's not 100% gray, but in a lot of ways, especially with the 0.0 product,
right?
It's pretty clear cut that you can. So we're a retailer.
I mean, I always wonder this because I'm making. Sorry to interrupt you, but we're trying to make kombucha and on one of our farm business, and I'm like, well, do you need an alcohol license to do this? Because there's like 0.0001. I mean, the laws are all screwed up throughout the country, and that's why I just one of the things I was just curious about, maybe less specifically, is the compliance issue in the United States around alcohol. As someone who's Tommy Boyded around the country, every state's different. Every state has different kind of, and that's one of the things I've realized. So I can only imagine the challenges that you have, trying to navigate that from a 50 state perspective.
Yeah, we actually have basically a budget set aside for compliance, as you said. And there are some people actually in the industry that kind of help with that, but it's kind of reverse logic, but the non-alcohol industry is actually a subsegment of the alcohol industry. So, and I'm not from beverage world, but in beverage world, if you go and Google non-alcoholic market reports or something, it finally hit me. I'm like, wow, this segment's massive, $500 billion. But in the beverage industry, they refer to non-alcoholic as everything except alcohol. So it's Coca-Cola,
exactly,
water,
tea.
Yeah. So I was like, whoa, okay, wait. So some of it is, we're in a space that isn't really computing for the industry, in so many ways. Like we could talk. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
In so many ways, from distribution to the shelf life of the products to its freeze temperature to, who the market is, but yet it's still part of that distribution chain and part of that marketing kind of world, especially for the big producers that have decided to move into this space more and more. So it's a mixed bag. A lot of areas we're able to kind of just stake the claim that we're alcohol free. Mm-hmm. In other areas, depending on the jurisdiction, for some of the beers, you're 0.5 or less, that's classified as near beer. And in some states you can distribute without a license. In some states you can ship and you need a license, or you're not allowed to ship. It has to be sold through bricks and mortar retail. And then it's all the way through to like orange juice has alcohol in it if you want to get strict enough. And in Muslim, in certain countries in the Middle East, the tolerance level for shipping alcohol is much lower. It's 0.03 instead of 0.5. So it's, as you said, it's a mixed bag once you get into anything, that's in that, that has a trace amount of alcohol.
Sure.
And we're constantly trying to navigate that. But it's touch and go. Like I'll just tell you one small story. Like for a while there on our e-commerce platform, which we use Shopify like a million others, but we're a fairly heavy user. We at one point got pulled off because they said, well, you're selling alcohol and we can't have that. And their algorithms or whoever does their reporting, all they did was look at the homepage. And if you look at it, for all the reasons you'd expect, it does look like alcohol because we talk about beer and we talk about spirits and we talk about wine and we talk about sparkling wines. Mm-hmm. So they just, they didn't do a big deep dive. They just tagged us as an alcohol site. And it took us a week. I had to finally get a human on the phone. I was like, you have to listen to me.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
They actually completely completely misunderstood.
Uh-huh.
So it's just an example of how kind of mixed up this whole space is.
Yeah, and I think that's why you said it's the wild, wild west. You're navigating regulatory agencies, all the shipping concerns. What is non-alc? Trying to educate the consumer. I think education's a big thing too. A lot of
producers talk about that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, for us even, it's like the education of how it's made and what it actually is. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there. But I'm thinking in putting myself in your shoes, I think that's a great platform that you have to be the educators of, along with some other producers. And I think that'll be great for as all of us become more aware and cognizant of the non-alc space.
Yeah, it's especially true maybe in the spirit alternatives or the mixer space. So with ciders and beer, I think it's still true because you still have to talk about alcohol-free and what that is and what that isn't. With the mixers and spirit alternatives, and that's where we have we have books as part of our so we offer books, and some of them are recipe books about mixed drinks, like products like Seedlip or other kind of in the gin kind of hibiscus botanical space. They've found that a lot. Like, we had an article in the New York Times, and I was talking to the food editor, and that was the first thing. Like, if you think you're going to buy one of these and it's going to taste exactly like, Hendrick's gin or something, and it just doesn't have the alcohol.
Right. Which changes the taste,
You would think people would probably, hopefully, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. But then you've got to start educating. No, it's really meant to be mixed into a cocktail. And so Seedlip would be a great example. If you go to their site, they've definitely invested in kind of talking about how it can be mixed.
When you look at your portfolio and the products that you sell, are there some brands that really stick out as really, planting their flag and leading the charge in the non-alc space as far as, awareness and sales go?
Yeah, I mean, in the beer space, being here in Connecticut, there's a company called Athletic Brewery that I think's really done a good job of positioning, obviously, focusing on health and athletics, but also being very positively oriented. And I think they're also, from a taste perspective, have done quite well. So partly out of just knowing them for a while, I would maybe pick them out. In the sparkling wine space, there's a company out of the UK called Thompson and Scott, and they do a product called Naughty. They've done a really good job of getting themselves into the conversation and into North America, and it's just early days for them. There's a lot of good US brands in the spirit alternatives. There's one out of Chicago called Ritual that has some interesting takes on tequila and rye, and some interesting ones that will be launching soon out of Kentucky for whiskey. Now, same conversation goes, obviously, and same for wines. There's a couple out of Napa that I think, but wines definitely got, maybe, especially if it's not sparkling wines, is I think had the biggest challenge. Because
people are particular, and people are particular with their wines,
and that was going to be my second thing. So the Gap is greater because of the, the sommelier side of the world,
Sure.
and also how far it has to go. Whereas beer, not that there aren't beer connoisseurs, and a lot of them that I know personally will slap me for saying this, but it's not quite the same as maybe a wine connoisseur.
Yeah,
and also, I think beers have evolved. I think they've come further in this space than wine has.
If you think about it from I'll use the word loosely, the craft perspective, I think beer, cider, spirits is getting there. They've kind of embodied a craft element, which is exploratory in nature, and kind of pushing the boundaries. I think wine, and part of the reason why it's great is it's traditional. It's from the earth. It's very connected to a process, and it's kind of this artisan thing. And I think it's hard to take that and then kind of, you almost pull away some of the essence of what it is when you de-alkify it, or however you would say that, de-alkalize it. But I've tasted some that I'm like, I think that this really hits it. So I think, there's just, we'll get it. The timing will get it. And there'll be a brand that breaks through, I'm sure, that really nails, kind of whatever the legs of the wine are, the tannins of the wines. And,
see, the fact that you even can say, there's people that's the, that there's a whole industry around that. And, wine snobs probably are going to, I've had this conversation, and a lot of it is out of the food critic and food world, are looking kind of side-eyed at some of the stuff that's going on. And I get it. Yeah. I mean, this is a big, there is some misinformation to say, hey, this is non-alcoholic wine. That right there, you're setting yourself up for potential disappointment without some conversations to go around it.
Yeah. And I think that they can be different things. They can be, it's like plant-based meats. They're not meats, but they're, it doesn't mean they're not good. It doesn't mean they're not enjoyable. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be a part of the option or the menu of things that we can order. And alcohol is the same way. It doesn't have to taste like the world's best Chianti, non-alcoholic, to be a great product. It can be, wine-inspired, wine-esque, and it can be something that's like that. And I think that that's going to be, when people can accept that, and that just takes time. I think you hit it right on the head, kind of following the vegan, and vegetarian training, because that was a hard, process to break through. And now you're kind of seeing it, the floodgates have opened, and people look for it and enjoy it now.
The other experience, sometimes the example that resonates is I've had an experience with some people where it's, and I've really enjoyed talking to so many different people about this, and sometimes with a drink in hand, is the Diet Coke experience. So it's like, hey, try this. It's Coke, but it's sugar-free, 0 calories. It's like, that sounds amazing. And then you drink it. It's like, wait a second.
It's not
Coke.
But
then over time, people acquire their taste for it for different reasons. And so there's a bit of that. And, it's an evolution. And I think we're going to be seeing, like you said, a lot more interesting products come to market where the focus is on the ritual as much as maybe the exact taste profile. So, one example is there's a product that I really like that we carry called Proto, and it's not a wine alternative. I mean, it's meant to be enjoyed with food, and it was done by one of the mixologists out of kind of the Momofuku restaurant group, but they're not trying to be. It's not like an alcohol-free wine, but it's meant to be drank instead of wine as part of a food, as part of a dinner experience. So I thought that was interesting that it was focused on an alternative to the experience, not trying to de-alcoholize something that kind of might be used at the same time or in the same situation.
Yeah, I think that's great. And for me, I love this shit, man. I think it's awesome to see new industries pop up and new people try to explore it. And I think it's going to be good for people. It's going to be good to have options. It's going to be good to have available non-alc options to filter in with your alcoholic options, or just, more options for people who are choosing a sober life, and I just think that the whole, the the stigma around, being at a bar and not drinking a beer, I think that this will help that, and it'll create a more social atmosphere of those experiences for people that are choosing their beverages for whatever reason, and it won't really matter because there'll be options, and it's not like you got to hide drinking like a water soda with a lime in it just to act like you're partaking. They'll have products that you can. I think that's such a healthy thing for the community, the whole human community. So I'm super stoked on it. What's your favorite product that you sell?
Oh, geez. Well, I mentioned a couple of them actually.
Yeah.
So I've been enjoying.
Your Canadian accent just shone through, by the way. I heard it for the first time.
What did I say?
Oh, geez. And it just sounded very Canadian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a few.
Yeah.
A couple of those. I've been really enjoying playing with some of the ones that might not fall into any of the specific categories. So I call them, under adult beverages.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple, Better, for Bitter, for Worse, and a couple others that are kind of following into like either a bitter based or kind of have a sour profile. There's another one out of Brooklyn called Curious Elixirs that I really like. So those all kind of fall into, I call them adult beverages because I don't know what else to call them, but they're not a alternative to a specific, category like spirits.
Right.
But they're still, I always say a kid wouldn't, if you gave it to my son, he wouldn't like it.
Right. No.
So those are a few others.
Sure. We touched on this a little bit, but when you look at your company and, in the revenue potential of this industry, do you think you could be a $20 million, $50 million, $100 million, e-commerce brand? You think that this industry has those type of legs over the next future, or do you think it'll be a little bit more of a jog as opposed to a sprint, and will be a little bit slower? What's your ultimate vision for what the industry holds and what Better Rhodes could contribute?
Sure. So the answer is yes to the former. And the reason is, if you look at the stats in terms of the general growth in the industry, if you look at what some of the larger players are doing in terms of focusing into this, and also its resonance with some of its, I call them sister industries, like the cannabis industry or the nootropics industry. Mm-hmm. I think it grows in sync with those. So, Molson Coors and InBev have both said that by 2025, they want 20% of their revenue stream to be coming from non-alcoholic. So I think you're seeing, the millennial drinking trends, the general consumption of alcohol trends, mm-hmm. Which is in symbiotic with the growth in the number of supply options, the products that are available. It's very similar to, and I also people getting more used to or having higher expectations about a curated or very tailored shopping and product experience in terms of what's available to them, that they have more options to just then maybe buying your traditional, single product. So we're kind of in that space, similar to say in the food space, like a Daily Harvest, or in the clothing space, like a Stitch Fix, mm-hmm. or there's all kinds of, curated services, for people who have pets. So I very much see that model that we've brought, including the community and content space, where we're bringing a curated experience to people, and we use our our relationship with our customers to be able to offer them, and they tell us what they want. So we're constantly trying to create new curated collections and source new products and bring them together in ways that we know the people that are subscribing to our boxes or buying our curated collections want to see. So because of both the general growth in the industry and the curated kind of business that you see in other sectors like clothes, like food, we're kind of right in the crossroads of both of those.
Yeah.
And both of those are definitely fast growing. So I don't see, we're tiny right now, but we're very excited about where this is going to take us.
Well, I'm excited for you, and I'm super grateful to have met you, and I will be a returning customer, and looking forward to enjoying a lot of your products. If people want to find your products and shop, how do they find you, and how do they learn more about everything you guys offer?
I appreciate that. It's betterrhodes.com. Our Rhodes is RHODS, and it's the same for all our handles.
All right.
Better Rhodes, at Better Rhodes for Twitter, Instagram, and your favorite channels. Tune in. And yeah, it's been great to talk to you too. And I'd love to hear more. Keep in touch about what you guys are doing with ciders. I think ciders is an underserved space when it comes to everything that we've been talking about. So I'd love to stay connected on that.
So I was gonna follow up with you after this. I'll reach out after the show and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit and maybe send you some R&D samples and visuals and get your feedback on it. So yeah,
definitely love to do that.
All right, we'll make it happen. Great meeting you, man.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, take care.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. You can find Everything Borrowed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Show your support and drop a 5-star review to help more people find our channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and everythingborrowedpodcast.com. EBP is produced by Chelsea Cox, Jason Brown, and Vox Adams. Edited and filmed by Nick Ferguson. Art is by Adam Yarborough. Everything Borrowed is an After Hours Media production. Copyright 2021.